The emergency klaxon screamed through the xenobiology wing of Research Station Kepler 442b as Dr. Aliana Chen sprinted down the corridor, her tablet clutched against her chest. Behind her, Chief Security Officer John Martinez's boots thundered on the metal floor. "Aliana, wait," John shouted, his hand hovering over his plasma sidearm. "The containment breach, those things could be anywhere." She didn't slow down. "They're not things, John, they're juveniles, scared, cold, and probably traumatized. They're Kroneth hatchlings. Do you have any idea what the Galactic Council brief said about their species?" John caught up to her, grabbing her shoulder. His dark eyes were wide with genuine fear. Adult Kronathi wiped out the entire Theshan expeditionary force. 17 ships, 4,000 souls. They're apex predators from a death world with gravity 3 times Earth standard. Aliana pulled free, her jaw set. "The brief also said the Kronathi are pre-spaceflight. That scout ship we found drifting. Those eggs weren't weapons, they were refugees." She tapped her tablet, pulling up the thermal scans. "Look, 4 heat signatures in Junction 7. Their body temperature is dropping. They're cold-blooded, John. This station is kept at human-comfortable temperatures, which for them is hypothermic." John ran a hand through his hair, stress evident in every line of his face. "The director ordered them terminated on sight. We can't risk." "The director is 200 light-years away on Earth. I'm the senior xenobiologist on site and I'm making the call." Aliana's voice softened. "I know you're scared, but please trust me. I've been studying the recordings from their egg chamber for 3 weeks. Their mother sang to them, John. We have it on audio. She knew she was dying and she sang." Something flickered in John's expression. He'd lost his own mother young. Aliana knew that much from the crew profiles. His hand fell away from his weapon. "5 minutes," he said quietly. "You get 5 minutes to assess. If they show any aggression, then you do what you need to do," Aliana finished. "But give me the chance to do what I need to do first." They moved together through the dimly lit corridors. Emergency lighting cast everything in red, making the station feel like the inside of a heart. Junction 7 was a storage area, filled with supply crates and spare equipment. The door had been torn open, not melted or blasted, but physically ripped apart. The metal was bent outward in a pattern that suggested incredible strength applied with surgical precision. "Jesus," John whispered, raising his weapon. "SHHH." Aliana stepped through the opening, moving slowly. "I'm coming in," she called out in a gentle voice. "I'm not going to hurt you. I know you're frightened." At first she saw nothing. Then her eyes adjusted, and she spotted them huddled behind a stack of water reclamation units. 4 small forms, each about the size of a house cat, covered in what looked like obsidian scales that reflected the red emergency lighting like liquid metal. They had 6 limbs, 4 for locomotion, 2 smaller manipulator arms tucked against their chests. Their heads were angular, almost geometric, with clusters of eyes that glowed faintly blue in the darkness. Beautiful, they were absolutely beautiful. "Oh, you poor bobbies," Aliana breathed. One of them made a sound, a high-pitched keening that stabbed straight into her chest. It wasn't aggressive. It was the sound every mother in the universe would recognize, a child crying. Aliana stepped back, John urged from the doorway. She ignored him. Slowly she knelt down, making herself smaller and less threatening. "I know," she murmured to the hatchlings. "I know you're cold, I know you're alone. Your mother loved you very much." The largest of the 4, perhaps 10 pounds of scale and sinew, took a tentative step forward. Its manipulator arms were trembling. Aliana noticed that its scales had lost some of their luster, stress coloration perhaps, or genuine hypothermia. She set down her tablet and very carefully began to peel off her lab coat. Underneath, she wore a thick cardigan her sister had knitted for her last birthday. She slipped it off, leaving her in just a tank top. The station's cold air immediately raised goosebumps on her skin. "Aliana, what are you doing?" John hissed. "Something stupid, probably." She held out the cardigan toward the largest hatchling. "Here, sweetheart, this will help." The creature cocked its head, eyes flickering through a spectrum of colors, blue to violet to a warm amber. Then, with movements almost too fast to follow, it darted forward and snatched the cardigan. But it didn't attack. Instead, it retreated to its siblings and began wrapping the fabric around the smallest of the group, using its manipulator arms with shocking dexterity. "They're intelligent," John said, wonder creeping into his voice despite his fear. "Really intelligent." "Tool use and cooperative care behavior," Aliana confirmed, her scientific mind cataloging details even as her heart swelled. "Probably smarter than human children at the same developmental stage." She stood slowly. "John, I need blankets, thermal blankets from the med bay, and I need whatever protein rations we have in storage." "You want me to leave you alone with them?" "I want you to help me keep them alive." She glanced back at him. "Please." John stood frozen for a moment, then cursed under his breath and disappeared down the corridor. Aliana heard his footsteps fade, then return at a run. He appeared in the doorway with an armload of silver thermal blankets and several nutrition bars. "This is insane," he muttered, but he was already helping her tear open the blankets. Together they approached the hatchlings. Aliana moved with slow, deliberate calm, narrating every action. "We're going to wrap you up, nice and warm. Then we'll find you some food. You must be starving." The hatchlings watched them with those alien, multifaceted eyes. The largest one made a chirping sound, not aggressive but questioning. Then, to Aliana's amazement, it extended one manipulator arm toward her, palm up. She placed her hand against it. The scales were cool and surprisingly smooth. She felt a vibration through the contact, almost like a cat's purr but with a deeper resonance. "Yeah," she whispered, "we're friends now." Over the next hour, Aliana and John wrapped each hatchling in thermal blankets, securing them with medical tape to create crude but functional body warmth. The smallest one kept slipping out of its blanket, so Aliana had an idea. She called down to her quarters and had John retrieve her emergency supplies. When he returned with the knitting needles and yarn she'd brought from Earth, he looked at her like she'd grown a second head. "You cannot be serious." "I grew up in Minnesota. I know cold and I know how to fight it." She was already casting on stitches. "This will take about 20 minutes per sweater. Keep them calm for me." John sat down heavily on a crate, shaking his head. But then he did something unexpected. He started talking to the hatchlings in the same soft, gentle voice Aliana had been using. "You know, my mom used to knit," he said. "She'd make these horrible, itchy sweaters every Christmas. I complained every year. Would give anything for one of those sweaters now." He paused. "You guys are lucky. Aliana's better at this than my mom was." The hatchlings seemed to respond to his voice, their eye clusters shifting to gentler colors. One of them crept closer and curled up against John's boot. He went very still. Aliana." "You're warm," she said without looking up from her knitting. "It trusts you." By the time she finished the first tiny sweater, she had to guess at the proportions, creating holes for 6 limbs instead of 4. The smallest hatchling was fast asleep against John's leg. She carefully slipped the garment over its head and through its limbs. It was ridiculous. It was absurd. A creature whose species had destroyed an entire military fleet, wearing a hand-knitted sweater with a pattern of tiny stars. It was also working. The hatchling's scales brightened almost immediately, and its breathing deepened into what was clearly a more restful sleep. "3 more to go," Aliana said, already starting the next one. John fed the others protein bars, which they devoured with disturbing efficiency. Their teeth were diamond-hard and serrated, designed to tear through something much tougher than processed nutrients. But they ate delicately, almost politely, from John's hands. "Why do you think their mother was on that ship?" John asked quietly as Aliana worked. "If they're pre-space flight, why was she in space?" Aliana had been thinking about that. The ship was damaged, not by weapons, by something else. Radiation scarring on the hull consistent with passage through an unstable wormhole. She glanced at the sleeping hatchlings. I think they were running. Maybe their world was dying. Maybe there was a war. Maybe they were taken by someone else and she was trying to escape. She swallowed hard. All we know for sure is that she died keeping these four alive, and she wanted them to survive badly enough to sing them to sleep while her own life ended. Jesus, John said again, but this time it was a prayer, not a curse. By the time all four hatchlings were wearing sweaters, stars, stripes, polka dots, and one with a clumsy attempt at a smiley face, it was well past midnight by station time. The creatures had arranged themselves into a sleeping pile, their body heat mixing with the thermal properties of the wool. They looked absolutely ridiculous and completely precious. Aliana took a photo with her tablet, then immediately encrypted it and sent it to her personal files. Evidence would matter when the director saw what she'd done. What now? John asked. The termination order is still active. Now we document everything. Intelligence, emotional range, capacity for trust and cooperation. We make a case that the Theshan massacre was a misunderstanding, that the Krenathi responded to a perceived threat against their young. Aliana looked at John. And we refuse to repeat history's worst mistakes. John nodded slowly. I'll back you, but Aliana, if we're wrong, if they turn aggressive. Then we'll deal with it, but look at them, John. She gestured to the pile of sleeping, sweater-clad hatchlings. Does that look like a mindless killing machine to you? The largest hatchling, the one who had first trusted her enough to approach, stirred in its sleep. Its manipulator arm reached out and grasped the edge of John's pant leg, holding on like a child clutching a security blanket. No, John admitted, his voice rough. It doesn't. They stayed there through the night, two humans keeping watch over four alien children in hand-knitted sweaters, rewriting the future one act of kindness at a time. When morning came and the director's furious transmission arrived, demanding explanations and immediate compliance, Aliana had her response ready. The video footage of the hatchlings sleeping peacefully, wrapped in wool and trust, spoke louder than any words could. Within a week, the Galactic Council's Xenobiology Division had dispatched a full team. Within a month, first contact protocols were being rewritten across a dozen species. And in the years to come, when historians documented humanity's contribution to galactic civilization, they would note that it wasn't our weapons or our technology that made the difference. It was a xenobiologist who saw children where others saw monsters, and who had the courage to answer fear with compassion. And really good knitwear.